John Miller adjusted his tie as he stepped onto the transport platform. The Galactic Imperial Council chamber awaited him, and today's message would change humanity's relationship with the stars forever. "Ambassador, are you certain about this?" asked his aide, a nervous young man clutching a datapad. Miller nodded firmly. "Earth's decision is final. The Council needs to hear it directly from us." The transport beam enveloped him in golden light. Seconds later, he materialized in the grand entrance of the Council chamber. The massive room stretched before him, filled with representatives from over 300 species. Some floated in special containment fields, others sat in chairs modified for bodies unlike any found on Earth. The chamber hummed with dozens of languages, all seamlessly translated through the neural implants each ambassador wore. Miller walked forward, his footsteps echoing on the polished stone floor. The council chamber had been designed to make individual representatives feel small and insignificant, a psychological tactic the Empire had perfected over millennia. But Miller stood tall. 50 years of serving as humanity's playthings had hardened Earth's resolve. The Grand Imperator sat on an elevated platform at the chamber center. The Zeltaren ruler towered nearly 9 feet tall, his iridescent scales catching the light from the artificial suns that hung from the ceiling. His 6 eyes tracked Miller's approach with cold calculation. "Ambassador Miller of Earth," announced the chamber's eye in its melodious voice. "You have requested an emergency audience with the full council." Conversations died down as attention turned to the small human figure. In the Empire's hierarchy, Earth ranked among the lowest tier of member worlds. A developing planet, only permitted representation as a courtesy. "I bring a message from the United Earth government," Miller said, his voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. He pulled a small crystal data cube from his pocket and inserted it into the podium. The cube glowed, verifying his identity and authority. The Grand Imperator's face tentacles twitched with impatience. "Proceed, Earth representative. The Council's time is valuable." Miller took a deep breath. This moment would be recorded in human history forever. "The United Earth government hereby declares Sol System and all its celestial bodies off-limits to Imperial vessels, personnel, and communications. Earth will no longer participate in the Galactic Empire's economic or political structures. This declaration is effective immediately." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds. Some representatives clicked mandibles in amusement, others buzzed with alarm. A few of the older species who understood the implications fell completely silent. The Grand Imperator raised a clawed hand, and the noise died instantly. "Ambassador Miller," he said, leaning forward until his massive head loomed over the human. "Surely you jest. No single system has ever withdrawn from the Empire in its 12,000 years of existence." Miller smiled thinly. "There's a first time for everything, Your Eminence." "This is absurd," hissed a Valerian representative, her snake-like body coiling in agitation. "Earth benefits enormously from Imperial protection and technology." "Does it?" Miller asked calmly. "Or has Earth primarily served as the Empire's laboratory? How many human test subjects have disappeared into Imperial research facilities? How many of our resources have been stripped without fair compensation?" The Grand Imperator's scales darkened, a sign of anger in his species. "Ambassador, you make dangerous accusations. Earth is a primitive world that would not survive a week without Imperial guidance." Miller uploaded a second file from his data cube. The chamber's holographic display filled with images of Earth's new defense systems, technology that no primitive world should possess. "We've learned much during our time in the Empire," Miller said, "including how to protect ourselves. Earth's decision is final. Any Imperial vessel entering Sol System from this moment forward will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly." He bowed slightly, just enough to avoid outright disrespect, and turned to leave. "This isn't over, human," the Grand Imperator called after him. Miller paused at the chamber doors. "No," he agreed. "It's just beginning." Admiral Susan Barnes stood at the viewing window of Earth Orbital Command, watching the last Imperial diplomatic vessel shrink to a distant point of light. 3 weeks had passed since Ambassador Miller delivered Earth's declaration to the Galactic Imperial Council, and the Empire was still acting as if humans were throwing a childish tantrum. They sent another message, said Captain Eric Jones as he approached with a datapad. The Imperial Diplomatic Corps deeply regrets Earth's confusion about its place in the galactic community and hopes we will reconsider our hasty actions. Barnes snorted. 50 years of exploitation, and they call our response hasty. She turned from the window to study the tactical display hovering at the center of the command room. Dozens of officers monitored Earth's newly activated defense grid, a network that had been built in secret over the past decade, while the Empire thought humans were merely struggling to master basic spaceflight. Status report, she ordered. Defense satellites are fully operational at all Lagrange points, replied Lieutenant Alan Foster from his station. The Jupiter and Saturn outposts are online and running at full capacity. Mars Defense Command reports all systems green. Barnes nodded. And the shield generators? Powered up and ready, said Dr. Nancy Clark, head of the scientific team that had reverse-engineered Imperial shield technology. The Empire thinks their tech is too advanced for us to understand, let alone improve upon. Barnes allowed herself a small smile. The Empire's greatest mistake had been underestimating human ingenuity and determination. While Imperial scientists conducted their experiments on humans, Earth's best minds were studying Imperial technology, finding weaknesses, making improvements. "Admiral," said Jones suddenly, his voice tense, "we're picking up a signal at the edge of the system. Imperial signature." The mood in the command center shifted instantly from quiet confidence to alert readiness. "Put it on screen," Barnes ordered. The tactical display zoomed out to show the outer reaches of the solar system. A small red dot pulsed near the orbit of Pluto. "Scout-class vessel," confirmed the sensor officer. "Light armaments, minimal crew. Probably here to test our resolve." Barnes tapped her comm link. "This is Earth Orbital Command to Imperial vessel. You are entering restricted space. Reverse course immediately." The response came quickly, the translator converting the Imperial Standard Language to English. "This is Imperial Scout Vessel Tyrak. We do not recognize Earth's claim to independence. We will proceed with our scheduled survey of the system." "Send the warning again," Barnes ordered. "Add that we will use force if necessary." Jones relayed the message. The Imperial vessel continued its approach. Barnes took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define Earth's future. If they backed down now, the Empire would never take their declaration seriously. "Weapons station," she said calmly. "Target the Imperial vessel with precision laser array 4. Disable their propulsion systems." "Targeting, Admiral," replied Weapons Officer Frank Wilson. "Ready on your command." The Imperial vessel accelerated suddenly, moving deeper into the system. "They're scanning our defense grid," reported Jones. "They must be gathering intelligence for the Empire." Barnes straightened her uniform. "Lieutenant Wilson, fire." A beam of concentrated energy lanced out from one of Earth's defense satellites. It struck the Imperial vessel with surgical precision, but instead of merely disabling the engines, the entire ship exploded in a brief, brilliant flash. Shocked silence filled the command center. "What happened?" demanded Barnes. "That was supposed to be a warning shot." Dr. Clark studied the readings, her face pale. "Their power core was unstable, possibly deliberately so. Our energy beam triggered a cascade failure." Barnes closed her eyes briefly. The first blood had been spilled. "Send a message to all Earth military installations," she said, "and notify the United Earth government. The Empire will respond to this, and it won't be with diplomatic vessels next time." As if confirming her words, the long-range sensors began to light up with multiple signals approaching the solar system. "Imperial signatures," said Jones grimly. "Lots of them. Military class." Barnes squared her shoulders. "So it begins." Imperial Commander Gax Tull stood on the bridge of his dreadnought, the Invincible Might. His tall, angular body cast a long shadow across the command deck. 6 arms crossed over his armored chest as he glared at the holographic display showing the Sol system. "Humans," he muttered, the word like poison on his tongue. "Barely 2 centuries of spaceflight, and they think they can defy the Empire." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Zex, approached with caution. "The 7th Fleet is in position, Commander. All ships await your orders." Caxtol nodded, his yellow eyes narrowing. The Emperor himself had tasked him with bringing these rebellious humans back in line. Failure was not an option. "Commence the blockade," he ordered. "No ships in or out. Let's see how long they last without Imperial resources." On the tactical display, 50 Imperial warships moved into formation, creating a net around the solar system. Caxtol felt a surge of satisfaction. Humans might have destroyed 1 scout ship, but they would soon learn the true might of the Empire. "Send a message to their government," he commanded. "Tell them they have 1 standard week to surrender and rejoin the Empire. After that, we begin confiscating any Earth vessels we encounter." "Yes, Commander," Zex responded, relaying the orders. The message was sent, but the response was not what Caxtol expected. Instead of fear or diplomatic pleas, the humans simply went silent. No response at all. Caxtol demanded after the deadline passed. "None, Commander," said the communications officer. "They're ignoring us." Caxtol slammed one of his fists against the command console. "Move the fleet closer. Begin intercepting any human ships trying to leave their system." The Imperial fleet advanced, crossing the invisible boundary that humans called the Kuiper Belt. The first Imperial ships approached what appeared to be a network of small satellites positioned at regular intervals. "What are those devices?" Caxtol demanded. The science officer studied the readings. "Unknown, Commander. They appear to be some kind of communications array, but the energy signatures are unusual." "Destroy one," ordered Caxtol. "Show these humans we're not intimidated by their toys." The nearest Imperial cruiser fired at one of the satellites. The energy beam struck, and then something extraordinary happened. The beam didn't destroy the satellite. Instead, it seemed to be absorbed, and then a ripple of energy spread between the satellites like a web coming to life. "Commander," shouted the sensor officer. "Energy spike." Before Caxtol could respond, a shimmering barrier appeared between the satellites, expanding outward until it connected with others, forming a vast energy shield that stretched across the system's edge. "Impossible," whispered Zex. "Humans don't have this technology." On Earth, in the underground headquarters of Planetary Security, Director Lisa Garcia watched the Imperial fleet's movements on her own tactical display. Beside her stood Dr. Ryan Phillips, Chief Architect of Earth's defense grid. "The shield is holding," Phillips reported, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "The Empire's weapons can't penetrate it." Garcia nodded, her face serious despite this first victory. "They'll try other approaches. This is just the beginning." "But how did we manage this?" asked a junior officer nearby. "The Empire has been blocking our access to advanced shield technology for decades." Garcia allowed herself a small smile. "The Empire never understood that while they were studying us, we were studying them too. Every time they took humans for their experiments, every time they graciously allowed our scientists to visit their facilities, we were learning." On the Invincible Might, Caxtol received reports of the shield's effectiveness with growing rage. "Impossible," he roared. "No primitive species could develop shields this advanced." He turned to his science officer. "Find a way through that barrier. I want troops on their planet within the week." "Yes, Commander," the officer replied, though doubt showed clearly on his alien features. Caxtol turned back to the display, watching the glowing shield that now protected the entire system. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something unfamiliar: uncertainty. 6 months into the blockade, the Imperial Science Council gathered for an emergency meeting. The circular chamber deep within the Imperial Palace on Vexera Prime hummed with worried conversations. 12 of the Empire's most brilliant minds, representing a dozen different species, fell silent as the doors opened. Dr. Kevin Wright walked in with measured steps. The only human in the room, he stood out sharply against the various alien forms around the table. Wright had left Earth 5 years before the Declaration, accepting a prestigious position in the Empire's Advanced Biological Research Division. He was one of the few humans the Imperial Council still trusted. Esteemed colleagues, began Grand Scientist Vorlak, the ancient Cephian whose tentacled head pulsed with luminescent patterns. We have called this meeting to address the human situation. 6 months have passed, and their shield technology continues to resist our efforts. More troubling still are the findings that Dr. Wright will now present. Wright activated the holographic projector at the center of the table. The image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. You've all wondered why Earth was chosen as a colony world despite having no valuable resources by Imperial standards, Wright began. His voice was calm, but those who knew humans well could detect the tension behind his words. The Marvellan scientist, a being of pure crystalline structure, chimed melodically. Earth has always been listed as a biological research outpost. Its diverse ecosystem provides useful compounds for Imperial medicine. Wright nodded. That's the official classification. But the truth is more specific. He touched the control panel, and the hologram shifted to show human biological systems in detail. It's not the planet that's valuable. It's us. Human biology is unique. We adapt faster than any species in the Empire. Our immune systems, our cellular regeneration, our neural plasticity. Wright displayed a series of classified research reports. The Empire has been harvesting human biological samples for decades. Our genetic material has been used to create treatments exclusively for high-ranking Imperial citizens. Our neural patterns have been mapped to improve AI systems. Our immune responses have been studied to enhance Imperial military troops. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Most of the scientists had known pieces of this information, but few understood the full scope. This is highly classified, warned Vorlak, eye stalks swiveling nervously. How did you access these files? Wright looked grim. I didn't need to access them. I helped create them. I was told my research was helping both humans and the Empire. I believed that lie for years. He paused, letting his words sink in. But that's not the most important part. The critical issue is that Earth found out. On the holographic display, he showed communications intercepted from Earth in the weeks before their declaration of independence. Discussions of secret medical testing. Evidence of unauthorized genetic sampling. Lists of humans who had disappeared during routine Imperial medical examinations. Someone in the Imperial Biological Division got careless, Wright explained. Files were left unsecured during a routine inspection of Earth's medical facilities. Earth's intelligence services discovered exactly what was being done to their people. Torzel, the insectoid head of genetics, clicked her mandibles anxiously. But these programs were authorized at the highest levels. The Emperor himself signed off on the human experimentation protocols. Yes, Wright agreed. And now Earth knows that too. They know they'd been treated not as Imperial citizens, but as laboratory specimens. The implications settled heavily on the council members. This wasn't just a rebellious system to be brought back into line. This was a species that had discovered the Empire's darkest secret about them. There's more, Wright added quietly. Based on my analysis of their shield technology and defense systems, I believe humans have been reverse engineering Imperial technology for years. They'd been preparing for this break long before they announced it. Grand Scientist Vorlak's skin paled to a sickly green. Then this isn't just a diplomatic crisis. It's potentially an existential threat to Imperial authority. Wright nodded. If other systems learn what was done to humans without their knowledge, how many might follow Earth's example? The room fell into troubled silence as the Imperial scientists contemplated a galaxy where the Empire's absolute authority could no longer be taken for granted. Imperial Agent Zev studied his reflection in the mirror of his small cabin aboard the merchant vessel Wandering Star. The genetic modifications had been extensive. His naturally blue skin was now the pinkish tan of a human. His 4 eyes had been reduced to 2, and a thick mop of brown hair covered his once smooth scalp. Even his height had been adjusted, painful bone surgery reducing his 7-foot frame to just under 6 feet. He barely recognized himself, which was exactly the point. Final approach to Earth Customs checkpoint in 30 minutes, announced the ship's captain over the intercom. All passengers prepare identification for inspection. Zev checked his forged credentials one more time. According to his papers, he was Ben Rogers, a trader from the independent world of Proxima Centauri II, one of the few non-imperial systems still willing to trade with Earth. His backstory was flawless, constructed by the Empire's best intelligence officers and supported by a detailed trade history and even childhood memories implanted directly into his brain. His mission was simple but crucial: infiltrate Earth's defensive grid and sabotage the shield generators that had kept the Imperial blockade at bay for 8 months. Once the shields fell, the 7th Fleet would strike decisively. The Wandering Star docked at Earth's orbital customs station. Zev joined the line of passengers, mostly returning humans, and a few alien traders from non-imperial worlds. He kept his expression neutral as he approached the customs officer. "Purpose of visit?" asked the officer, a stern-faced woman who barely looked up from her screen. "Trade negotiation," Zev replied, his voice perfectly matching human speech patterns thanks to vocal cord surgery. "I represent Proxima Textiles. We're interested in Earth cotton and synthetic fibers." The officer scanned his credentials chip. Zev felt a moment of tension, but her expression remained unchanged. "Proceed to secondary screening," she said, stamping his entry permit. Zev maintained his calm exterior while his heartbeats accelerated. Secondary screening wasn't necessarily suspicious. Many visitors underwent additional checks, but it could complicate things. In the secondary screening room, a friendly male officer offered him a seat and a cup of water. "First time on Earth, Mr. Rogers?" the man asked casually. "Yes," Zev replied with the rehearsed enthusiasm of a curious trader. "I've heard so much about your planet. The independent worlds have been following Earth's stand against the Empire with great interest." The officer smiled. "I bet they have. Mind placing your hand on this scanner?" "Just routine biometric verification." Zev placed his hand on the flat surface, confident in his disguise. The Empire had replaced his natural 3-fingered hands with perfect human replicas, complete with fingerprints and DNA that matched his false identity. The scanner hummed softly. The officer glanced at his screen, then back at Zev with the same friendly smile. "Everything looks in order. You're cleared to proceed to Earth. Your hotel reservation at the Global Trade Center has been confirmed. Enjoy your stay, Mr. Rogers." Zev thanked him and collected his belongings. That had been easier than expected. Perhaps Earth's security wasn't as sophisticated as Imperial intelligence had feared. 3 hours later, Zev entered his hotel room in New Geneva, Earth's commercial hub. The room was spacious and comfortable, surprisingly luxurious for a planet supposedly struggling under an Imperial blockade. He swept the room for surveillance devices, finding none. Good. He unpacked his bags, including specialized equipment disguised as ordinary trade samples. As he began setting up his secure communication device to report his successful infiltration, the door to his room slid open without warning. A woman entered, followed by 4 security officers. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, and wore the uniform of Earth's Security Service with silver insignia indicating high rank. "Agent Zev of Imperial Intelligence," she said calmly. "My name is Agent Mary Wilson of Earth Counterintelligence. We've been watching you since you entered the system." Zev reached for the concealed weapon in his jacket, but found his body suddenly paralyzed. Wilson gestured to a small device one of her officers held. Neural inhibitor. Quite effective, isn't it? We based it on Imperial technology, but we've made some improvements. She approached him, studying his features with professional interest. Did you really think we wouldn't recognize Imperial genetic modifications? Our scanners detected your artificial DNA matrix the moment you stepped aboard the customs station. Zev stared at her, unable to speak, but his eyes filled with questions. Commander Daniel White stood on the bridge of the EDF Phoenix, Earth's most advanced warship. Though small by Imperial standards, the Phoenix represented humanity's greatest technological achievement, a vessel built with reverse-engineered Imperial technology, but modified in ways the Empire had never imagined. Final systems check complete, reported First Officer Julie Ramsey. All 30 ships report ready for jump. White nodded, his expression serious. For 10 months, Earth had maintained its defensive position, protected by the shield network that had kept the Imperial blockade at bay. Now, it was time to take the fight to the Empire. Signal the fleet, White ordered. Execute jump on my mark. The countdown appeared on the main view screen. When it reached 0, White gave the command, mark. Space seemed to fold around the Phoenix, stars stretching into lines as the ship entered the jump corridor, a method of faster-than-light travel that humans weren't supposed to understand, let alone improve upon. The Empire had carefully restricted Earth's access to jump drive technology, allowing humans only the most basic interstellar capabilities. What they didn't know was that Earth scientists had not only mastered the technology but enhanced it, creating drives that were faster and more efficient than Imperial standards. When the Phoenix emerged from the jump corridor, it wasn't alone. 29 other Earth vessels appeared alongside it, deep in Imperial space, near the heavily populated world of Nexus Prime. We've arrived undetected, confirmed the sensor officer. Imperial defense grid shows no alert status. White allowed himself a small smile. Begin broadcast. This wasn't a military strike in the traditional sense. Earth's fleet carried no heavy weapons. Instead, each ship was equipped with powerful communication arrays and data transmission systems. Broadcasting on all frequencies, announced Communications Officer Sam Green. Imperial translation protocols engage. Every communication device on Nexus Prime will receive our message. Across Nexus Prime, in homes and businesses, on personal devices, and public screens, the normal Imperial broadcasts suddenly cut out. In their place appeared images of Earth and its people, along with damning evidence, Imperial documents detailing the secret biological experimentation program that had treated humans as lab specimens for decades. People of the Galactic Empire, began the recorded message, narrated in multiple languages. For 50 years, the Imperial government has been conducting unauthorized experiments on human beings. They have harvested our genetic material, tested weapons on our people, and used us as unwilling test subjects. The broadcast included proof. Imperial documents stolen by Earth hackers who had penetrated the Empire's supposedly impenetrable data networks. Security footage from Imperial labs showing humans being experimented on. Internal memos discussing the human resource, as if people were simply materials to be used. Earth did not leave the Empire out of rebellion. The broadcast continued. We left because we discovered the truth. Now we share that truth with you. Ask yourselves, what is the Empire doing to your people that you don't know about? On Nexus Prime, citizens of a dozen different species watched in growing horror and anger. Imperial security forces scrambled to shut down the broadcast, but Earth's technology maintained the signal. On the Phoenix, White received reports from the other ships in the fleet. Broadcast successful on Nexus Prime, Ramsey reported, moving to secondary targets. One by one, the Earth fleet jumped to different Imperial worlds, repeating the broadcast before Imperial forces could respond. By the time Imperial warships arrived, the Earth vessels had already jumped to their next destinations. Sir, said Green, monitoring Imperial communications, we're picking up widespread civilian unrest on Nexus Prime and 3 other worlds. There are protests forming outside Imperial government buildings. In the Imperial Palace on Vexera Prime, the Emperor himself watched the broadcasts with growing fury. "Find those human ships and destroy them," he ordered his military commanders. "Shut down these transmissions immediately." But it was too late. The information was spreading faster than the Empire could contain it. On dozens of worlds, Imperial citizens were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about their government. "Jump to our next target," White ordered as Imperial ships appeared on long-range sensors. The Phoenix and its fleet vanished into jump space, carrying their message of truth to yet another Imperial world. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Empire faced something more dangerous than a military threat: an information revolution. 2 years after Earth's declaration of independence, the planet had changed dramatically. New cities rose with architecture that blended human creativity with advanced technology. Fields of solar collectors and fusion plants provided abundant energy. The orbiting shipyards produced vessels that combined Imperial technology with human innovation. In the United Earth Government headquarters in New Geneva, President Olivia Bennett reviewed the latest reports. Earth's economy was thriving despite the blockade. Other systems, inspired by Earth's stand, had begun their own movements for greater autonomy within the Empire. "Madam President," her aide announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the edge of the system. It's an Imperial flagship requesting permission to enter." Bennett raised an eyebrow. "Imperial ships have been trying to force their way past our defenses for 2 years. Why ask permission now?" "This is different," the aide explained. "It's the Emperor's personal vessel, carrying the Grand Imperator himself." Bennett sat back in her chair, surprised. The Empire had tried everything from military force to economic pressure to bring Earth back into the fold. They had attempted infiltration, sabotage, and even tried to turn public opinion against Earth's government. Nothing had worked. "Put the message on screen," she ordered. The massive, scaled face of the Grand Imperator appeared. His once vibrant scales had dulled, and the proud angles of his face seemed somehow diminished. "President Bennett," he began, his voice lacking its former arrogance, "I request permission to enter Earth space with a single diplomatic shuttle. I come to speak with you personally about the future relationship between Earth and the Empire." Bennett studied him carefully. "The last Imperial representatives who entered our system came with hidden weapons and sabotage equipment. I understand your caution." The Imperator replied, "I am prepared to submit to any security measures you deem necessary." After consulting with her Security Council, Bennett granted permission for a single shuttle with minimal escort. The decision was controversial, but she believed it was time to hear what the Empire had to say. 3 days later, the Grand Imperator's shuttle landed at the New Geneva spaceport. He emerged with just 2 aides, surrounded by Earth security forces. Crowds gathered behind barriers, watching silently as the being who had once ruled over 1,000 worlds walked like an ordinary visitor on Earth's soil. In the presidential office, Bennett received him formally. The Imperator had to duck to enter the human-sized room, and the chair specially constructed for his massive frame still seemed uncomfortable. "Have you come to recognize our independence?" Bennett asked directly. The Imperator's scales had lost their luster. 2 years of political upheaval had taken their toll on the once mighty ruler. "I've come to propose a new relationship," he said carefully. "Not as rulers and subjects, but as equals. Many systems have followed your example. The Empire as it was cannot continue." Bennett kept her expression neutral, though inside she felt a surge of victory. "We have terms." "Of course you do," the Imperator said wearily. "Humans always do." Over the next week, negotiations proceeded. The Empire would formally recognize Earth's independence. In exchange, Earth would share certain technologies and agree to limited trade relationships. Most importantly, the Empire would reform its practices, creating a council where all member worlds would have representation proportional to their population. The broadcasts your ships made throughout Imperial space changed everything, the Imperator admitted during a private conversation. 17 systems have declared partial independence. Dozens more are demanding reforms. The Empire has never faced such a challenge. Bennett nodded. The Empire was built on secrets and control of information. We simply introduced transparency. On the final day of negotiations, Bennett and the Imperator stood together on the steps of the government building. Cameras captured the historic moment as both leaders signed the Treaty of New Geneva, formally recognizing Earth's sovereign status. As they shook hands, the Imperator awkwardly adapting to the human custom, Bennett noticed a small sign being installed at the system's defense perimeter. It still broadcast on all frequencies. Earth System. Imperial in Inturai forbidden, without exp lysoitp ermeassion. But beneath it, a smaller message now appeared. Diplomatic inquiries welcome. The Imperator followed her gaze to the newsfeed showing the sign. A new era begins, he said. Bennett smiled. No, it began 2 years ago. You're just joining it now.